I was 58, lonely, married, and then he walked into my kitchen. I was 58, still married, but I hadn't been touched in years. And then, one quiet Tuesday morning, he walked into my kitchen like he belonged there, and something inside me cracked wide open. My name is Arlene. I've been married to Roger for 34 years. We weren't unhappy. We were just silent, like an old song that used to mean something. Now it only played in the background. We shared a home, a bed, even a dog, but not much else. He stopped noticing when I wore perfume. I stopped asking him how his day was. It was easier that way, safer. Sometimes I'd hear couples laughing at the grocery store or see old women holding hands with their husbands at the park. And I'd feel this strange ache, like I'd missed something, or maybe lost it without realizing. Hadn't been touched, really touched, in over a decade. Not a lingering hand on my cheek, not a case that meant, I still choose you. Just the dull rhythm of a marriage grown quiet. The day he walked in was unremarkable in every other way. It was a Tuesday. Late morning, I'd just made coffee. The window was open and the breeze smelled like fresh grass. I was barefoot, still in my robe, humming something without meaning to, and then he knocked once and stepped inside like he'd done it 1,000 times. "Hey, Aunt Arlene," he said. I turned, and it took me a moment to recognize him. Matthew, my niece's ex-boyfriend. He was 32 now, grown, confident, sun-kissed from working outdoors. He had stopped by to drop off some tools he'd borrowed from Roger. Said he thought I might like help fixing the garage door. But I barely heard the words. Because the way he looked at me, it wasn't casual. It wasn't what you expect from a man 26 years younger than you. It was seeing. So he saw me. Like the woman I forgot I still was. I made us coffee. We sat at the kitchen table, sunlight streaming in across the tiles. He told me about his landscaping business, his long days, the way his body ached at night. I laughed at one of his stories, a real warm laugh I hadn't heard from myself in ages, and his eyes lingered on me, softer than they should have. And he said, "You always had the kindest eyes. Even when I was with Julia, I used to wonder what it would feel like to be yours." I blinked. My breath caught. "Matthew," I whispered, but I didn't stop him. I didn't correct him, because a part of me wanted to know what it would feel like to be someone's again. He didn't touch me, not then, but the air between us, it was no longer safe. That night, Roger came home late, tired, grumbling, didn't ask how my day was, didn't notice the fresh flowers on the table, didn't care that dinner was cold. And I sat across from him, hearing Matthew's voice echo in my mind. I used to wonder what it would feel like to be yours. I looked at Roger, the man I had built a life with, and felt a guilt so thick it nearly drowned me. But also, I felt alive again. Terrified, but alive. The next morning, I wore lipstick for the first time in months. I told myself it meant nothing, but I found myself wondering if he'd come back. And if he did, would I ask him to leave? Or would I let him in, not just into my kitchen, but into everything I had been too afraid to feel? Matthew came back the following Friday. He didn't call ahead, just showed up with a bag of tools and that same soft smile. "I figured I'd help finish the garage," he said, casually holding a wrench like it was an excuse. Roger wasn't home. He rarely was on Fridays. Golf with his brother, then drinks that blurred into evening. I nodded, too quickly. "Coffee?" I asked. He smiled. "Always." We didn't talk much while he worked, but I watched him from the window. sleeves rolled up, forearms tanned, eyes focused. And I hated myself for the way my stomach fluttered. This man, this boy, practically, was working in my yard like it was just a chore. But to me, it felt like he was knocking on the door of something long buried. It was almost dark when he came back inside. He was sweating, wiping his brow, and I handed him a cold glass of lemonade without a word. As he drank, a drop of it slid down his chin. Without thinking, I reached forward and wiped it with my thumb. He paused, glass still in hand, and then looked at me, slowly. "You don't have to be alone all the time, Arlene," he said. It wasn't flirtation. It was concern, affection, and something far more dangerous. "I'm married," I said. My voice was a whisper, a warning, a plea. "I know," he replied. And then he stepped forward. He didn't touch me, but the space between us was gone. I could smell his skin, soap, grass, heat, and I could feel how close my heart was to betraying everything I'd promised myself I'd never break. That night, I couldn't sleep. Roger was snoring beside me, oblivious. His back to me like always. He hadn't really touched me in 10 years. I stared at the ceiling and remembered how Matthew looked at me. Like I wasn't invisible. Like I was wanted. I felt shame, but beneath it something electric. I kept asking myself, was it loneliness talking? Or did I deserve, after all these years, to feel human again? The third time he came, I didn't even pretend to be surprised. He brought groceries I didn't ask for. Said he figured I could use the help. We made pasta together. He chopped tomatoes, I poured wine, and at some point, I started laughing. Real, full-belly laughter over nothing. And he looked at me like I was the most beautiful thing in the room. Then it happened. It wasn't fast or careless. He placed a hand on mine while I was setting the table. His thumb brushed my wrist. I didn't pull away. Instead, I closed my eyes and leaned into his shoulder. It was barely a touch. But in that small gesture, I felt everything I had been starving for. Warmth, affection, choice. He kissed me at the sink. My hands were wet from rinsing dishes. He dried them with a towel, slow, intentional. Then he touched my face. Gently, like he wasn't sure if I'd let him. I didn't stop him. When our lips met, it wasn't wild. It was soft, careful, sad. It felt like apology and hunger tangled in one breath. I pulled away, gasping, not from fear, but from how much I wanted it. "I can't," I whispered. But even as I said it, I was already leaning in again. We didn't sleep together that night. He kissed my neck, touched my hands, held me, and that alone felt more intimate than anything Roger had done in a decade. After he left, I sat alone in the dark, wrapped in guilt, but also in longing. The truth burned in my throat. I didn't love Matthew. Not really. But I loved the way he made me feel. Like I was still alive. Like I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I folded Roger's laundry and placed it in his drawers. Cooked his eggs just the way he liked. And all the while, my body still remembered the shape of someone else's hands. I wasn't proud of what I had done. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I started waiting for Fridays. Not because of anything I did, not because of errands or markets or my stale routines, but because I hoped he'd show up. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. And when he didn't, my heart sank so low, it scared me. I was 58. a grown woman, a married woman. But I would find myself checking the window, straightening my hair before 3 p.m., brushing a touch of blush across my cheeks. It was pathetic, I knew it. But loneliness does strange things. It doesn't whisper, it claws. One afternoon, he stayed later than usual. Roger was out of town, a sales retreat he forgot to tell me about until the night before. The house was quiet, soft rain tapping the windows. We sat on the couch with tea and silence. Not awkward silence, familiar, gentle. He looked at me, really looked at me. "You don't have to explain," he said. "I know this isn't forever. I just like being near you." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just kissed him. And this time, I didn't stop. It wasn't desperate or frantic. It was slow, sorrowful, a quiet ache finally given a voice. He carried me to the bedroom. Not the guest one, mine. Roger's shirts still hanging in the closet. Wedding photo still on the dresser. But that night, the bed belonged to me, and someone who made me feel like I mattered. I watched him sleep for a long time. His chest rose and fell in calm, steady breaths. My heart didn't pound like I thought it would. It ached. He woke up slowly, smiled when he saw me watching. Then he kissed my hand. No words. And maybe that's what undid me. Not the kiss. Not the bed. But the fact that someone, anyone, remembered how to be gentle Roker came home the next day. He smelled like hotel soap and cheap whiskey. Gave me a distracted hug. Asked what was for dinner. I stood there, wooden hands still smelling faintly of Matthew's cologne. "A meatloaf," I said. Like nothing happened. Like my world hadn't cracked in half. I didn't notice. He never noticed. The affair didn't become a regular thing. It wasn't like the movies. No secret hotel rooms, no passionate midday phone calls. It was quieter than that. Zadar. He'd come when he could. We'd talk, touched, sit together like two people lost in the same fog. Sometimes there was sex. Sometimes there wasn't. But always, always, there was guilt. Not for Roger, but for me. For who I was becoming. For who I had allowed myself to be. One Thursday afternoon, he didn't show up. I didn't panic. Not right away. But then he didn't answer his texts. Or the one voicemail I dared to leave. By Saturday, my stomach felt hollow. I thought of all the worst things. A car crash. A woman his age. Regret. Then I saw him. At the grocery store. With someone. She looked young, pretty, light. And he didn't see me. But I watched them laugh in aisle 4, arms brushing like it meant something. And that was the moment I knew. Whenever this was, it had always been temporary. I just didn't want to admit it. I sat in my car for almost 30 minutes after that, staring out the windshield, watching rain blur the world. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. It wasn't that he owed me anything. He didn't. But I realized something far worse than betrayal. I had let myself believe in a life that never truly existed. I had handed over pieces of my heart like confetti. And now, I was standing in the ruins of a party only I attended that night. I cooked dinner. Again, Roger watched TV, muted laughter echoing from the living room. And I stared at the cutting board, realizing I didn't even taste the food anymore. Matthew gave me something real, but it was never mine to keep. And now, even silence feels heavier than it used to. Days pass like shadows, long, quiet, cold. Roger never asked, never noticed the change in my eyes. I carried this secret like a stone in my chest. Every glance at the wedding photo was a stab, not because of regret for Roger, but for the woman I used to be. One evening I sat down with Matthew. We didn't speak of the affair. We didn't speak of the guilt or the pain. We just sat. Sometimes silence says everything. I told him I never wanted to hurt anyone. His hand found mine, not with promises, but with understanding. I looked at myself in the mirror one morning. No makeup, no lies. Just a woman who loved and lost in ways she never expected. I wasn't proud, but I wasn't ashamed either. I was human. Flawed, fragile. I never left Roger. We never talked about what happened. But something inside me changed. I stopped waiting, stopped pretending. I found peace in small things. A morning cup of tea, a walk in the garden, the quiet hum of a house finally my own. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's soft. Sometimes it's messy. And sometimes it's simply about finding yourself again. After you've lost your way, I was 58, lonely, and broken. But in that brokenness, I finally found a kind of freedom I never expected.